Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis and I'm here with my co-host George Binns, and our special guest tonight is Pulin Patel, who's a pharmacist and owner of the medicine shop here in Beverly. We have a great show for you tonight, but before I have a top of the page, I got a little cranky this afternoon. I got a call from a friend of mine. We're invited over his house this weekend for dinner with a few other people. And he called me to say, can you do me a favor? Let's not talk politics tonight, Saturday night, because one of the people that's coming over is a liberal, and she cannot handle anything to do about Trump. So even if she starts talking about the presidency or whatever, please keep your mouth shut. And of course, I'll do that, but boy, I'll tell you, you talk about a bunch of babies, the liberals. Why can't they deal and talk to each other? Why can't we learn from each other? It's their way or the highway. That gets me cranky, and that's my top of the page.
Good.
Okay, I'm sorry it was off topic, but I had to do it. Pulin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Elliot.
We've had a series of shows dealing with the opiate problem. And thought it might be a good idea to have a pharmacist come in. I mean, you, as pharmacists, because I've known plenty of pharmacists in my day, you're a lot smarter sometimes than some doctors. You know what's going on, and you can tell, I think, when a doctor gives a prescription that maybe they shouldn't give, or if somebody is on something that they shouldn't be on. So tell me, if somebody walks into your store and you look at them, how can you tell if they're on some kind of drug that perhaps they shouldn't be?
Yeah, so Elliot, it's really tough to tell if someone's supposed to, not be on a drug, just by the looks of it, right? You really have to look at their prescription history, look at, what's in front of you at that moment and say, hey, does this fit in with their overall medication regimen, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, that's when we question it, right? And then give the doctor a call. And so, the doctor serves a role and we serve a role. One's not necessarily smarter than the other. It's just we have different roles. And so our role is specifically just for the medication management for that patient. And so, yeah, I think that's really where the pharmacist fits in the roles there.
All right, but what happens if, okay, you're at the medicine shop,
right?
But a particular person used to go to Walgreens,
right?
Then they went to CVS,
right?
And now they're coming to you.
Right.
How can you see their records?
So if it's the regular prescriptions, just the regular heart medications and whatnot, that one we really can't see. But since we're talking about the opioids, so if there's a controlled medication, there is a system in Massachusetts where we can see, controlled substances for that patient, prescribed by whoever they're prescribed by, filled at wherever pharmacy they were filled, and you can quickly tell if there's a pattern of abuse, if there's, a pattern that needs to be questioned, right? And in that case, then what we do is call the other pharmacy, see, hey, was this in fact filled? What's the story behind this? And then let the prescriber know, because sometimes the prescribers don't know that they went to see another prescriber and they got something else. Maybe not the same exact thing, but something else that's in the same class, different strength, something else that could potentially interact with what they're getting at that moment. So there is a system for pharmacies and doctors to check.
So this is recorded by the person's name as opposed to the doctor's prescriptions.
So I'm not sure if it, the details of the database.
If I walk in and
right.
said, okay, George Binns, I got a script for
right.
50 oxycodone.
Right.
Can you tell if I got 50 more from CVS 2 days ago?
Pretty much, yeah. Because date of birth, name, and for the most part it goes through insurance. So your insurance name has to match up with, the name that we put in, which matches up with what the other places put in. So pretty much it's a pretty good system.
They've recently changed the limitations on how big a prescription the doctors can prescribe per run. What is it now?
So 7 days, I believe, an initiation of therapy. So let's say if you're starting brand new on something, you're limited to a certain number of days,
Yeah.
To start with, right? And then if you need to continue on that, then if you get another prescription for however number of days you need to be on that therapy. Now, if the patient does have the option to request less than what's on the prescription as well.
Or just not use them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, exactly though, what are opioids and what is their basic purpose?
Pain management, right? So let's say surgery. I'll tell you, right before I came here, working with a patient that just had surgery or had surgery about 2 weeks ago, and they're having some some GI complications from that. So it's pain management. Whether it's from a surgery, whether it's chronic pain, but it's one of the tool sets that prescribers can use to prescribe medications for pain management. The side effect of which can be abuse. Some of these medications are in specific categories because of their abuse potential, right? So you have various categories, and the lower the number, the higher the abuse potential there is there.
So if it's pain management, why wouldn't aspirin work?
Aspirin could work in some cases, but it's these are usually higher levels of pain, right? So let's say, for example, you're in a car accident, you break something, something happens, and aspirin's really probably not going to do the trick. I can tell you, I had dental surgery, and aspirin definitely would not have done the trick. But these medications do have a use in our, in the patient's life, right?
Yeah, they're a legitimate
right
approach to, as you say, pain management. And that's unfortunately one of the pathways that a lot of people get hooked on it, that they keep taking more and more because the pain doesn't go away, or they get comfortable with it, and then all of a sudden, oh, there's some other benefits from this funny stuff.
Right, yeah.
And next thing you know, they're hooked, and hooked is a disease.
Absolutely, and it should be treated and considered as such. And I think the social stigma around abuse and kind of getting hooked on something, it's dissipated recently, right? But it's still there. But it really should not be there. It's really a disease and should be treated as such.
Well, there's been, as you know, a lot of deaths recently, particularly in the North Shore,
Right.
from opioids. So it's obviously a real problem. How much is an overdose? Or is it different for every person?
So, Elliot, it's different for every person, and it depends on what they're taking, right? So an opioid can be, something that's prescribed and abused, right? But I think the bigger problem right now is the heroin problem that the whole nation is having, right? And so that comes about because, let's say if someone doesn't have access to the prescription stuff, that is more readily available. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but there's medications that have good uses. Those medications can sometimes be abused, and when those are not available, there are other illicit drugs that people can turn to.
Well, I think part of the problem is that after a while, the one Percocet it doesn't have the effect it used to have. Maybe we try 2.
Right.
And then 3, and say, oh yeah, try some oxycodone or something else. And pretty soon they find out that, well, we need too many of those, and some guy's waiting down the corner with some black tar heroin out of Mexico, and oh yeah, we'll try that one next. And now the question I guess it comes down to is this stuff called fentanyl.
Right.
Is that a legally prescribable drug, or is that just a street drug only?
No, it's a legally prescribed drug, and it has some incredible health benefits, right? So fentanyl is actually or more commonly used in the pharmacy as a patch that someone puts on for a number of days, right? So they're not constantly taking pills, and and that supposedly the abuse potential is a little less, right? Where the patch just stays on for a number of days, and the therapeutic benefits are gained. I think the problem is that the bad guys have figured out a way to take the fentanyl out of the patches, put them into other things. And it's fentanyl. It's interesting. It's therapeutic in micrograms, right? So if you think about it, like an oxycodone or oxycontin, whatever, it's in milligrams, right?
Yeah.
This is in micrograms. And so
You're saying it's very potent stuff.
very potent stuff.
Yeah.
And if someone doses it wrong, on the street, it's horrible, horrible effects.
Well, I assume it makes it very fast acting because of its potency. Or
So I'm not sure how the street version of it works.
yeah.
But I think what the problem that people get into is they may put too much of it into whatever they're using and not realize that.
And that, therefore, was an overdose.
Right.
Yeah, that's the fundamental problem with all your street drugs. You have no idea what it is and how much they cut it or how much they forgot to cut it.
Right.
If someone's on Oxycontin or any of these drugs, and can they actually realize themselves that they're getting hooked?
I think it's possible, certainly. It's certainly possible to realize that, hey, my pain is no longer there, but I'm taking this because of pressures at work, at home, wherever else, right? I think that's certainly a possibility.
So is it also a depression-type drug?
It's not used to treat depression, no. Certainly, if someone's in pain and can't function or do whatever, that can certainly lead to depression. But it's not used to treat depression.
Okay. So if somebody is beginning to realize that they're getting hooked on it for whatever reason, what's their next step?
Talk to the doctor immediately. Talk to the pharmacist, the doctor immediately. There are ways to kind of wean yourself off of that in a safe and controlled manner. There are other steps that they can take to kind of replace those drugs with something else that isn't as abusive or has abusive potential.
Okay. Now, we all know some people, unfortunately, that have been hooked.
Right.
And that have gone to some type of treatment center.
Right.
Do you know what goes on at the treatment centers? I mean, how do they get people off being hooked? Do you have any idea on that?
So a combination of medications, right, and therapy, counseling, group therapy, which really does work, right? I mean, I've known somebody that went through that, and seeing their family go through that is just incredibly tough, right? But I can tell you, a few years later now, they're doing great. Family, everything, it's worked out. So these places do work, right?
So is that a combination of methadone and like the Alcoholics Anonymous 10-step program? Or is it,
Something like that, yeah.
what's different about it?
I'm not sure if it's how to compare it versus like the Alcoholics Anonymous program. Each program I think is a little bit different. The core basis are the medication treatments for it, as well as the therapy, right? Someone has to realize that they want to get better, right? So whether that therapy focuses on that, as well as steps to keep them from wanting to go back, right? Because it's, one of the concerns is that relapse.
Yeah.
Right.
That was actually my next question is, let's assume, okay, somebody had surgery, somebody gets on Oxycontin or whatever,
Right.
and then gets hooked. Now they're fine. They have another surgery or some kind of pain type of a thing.
Right.
what does the doctor do? Now, the doctor knows that the person had a dependency at one point.
Right.
Do they put them on an opioid again, or do they do something different?
I think that would be a question for a physician. Certainly that does weigh into what they prescribe, and maybe a kind of a marker to say, I need to monitor this person a little bit more closely, right? Whether that be, I want to see you every week, come back for your prescription, or, we're not going to sign off on the prescription until I actually see you, or something else. But that would certainly be an indicator for, closer monitoring.
Because, I could envision somebody hurting themselves in order to get some.
That's certainly true. I haven't thought of that, but yeah.
Well, the easiest one to fake is a back pain. Everybody's got one.
Yeah. But even in a back pain, right, there are scans that can be done. There can be certain things that can be done to show what's the underlying basis of that back pain, right?
That gets another story we'll blow a whole hour on. But anyway, one of the questions that comes up, we've had some discussions with other people on it, and they keep talking about Narcan as the magic bullet that will get somebody out of an overdose. And one of the comments I thought I picked up was that you don't need a prescription to get Narcan. That's accurate or not?
Yes and no.
Okay.
and so it's yes in the sense you may not necessarily have to go to the doctor to get the prescription and bring it to us, right? Because it's an emergency situation, whatever it is. It's not that typical, hey, you need a physical prescription or something sent electronically to get that. The pharmacy does need to have a prescriber to have a standing order to have that. And I think almost every pharmacy now does.
Well, you've got a standing order as the pharmacist to dispense Narcan on demand.
Correct.
Okay. So if I decide that I got somebody in the family that's getting a little too high too often,
right,
and I want to have equivalent to an EpiPen,
right.
So I can go into your pharmacy and say, I got a problem, I need help. Can you give me a couple of Narcan shots? And you can hand them to me, or I can buy them from you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is possible to get them in it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's been a great benefit. I think all the first responders have that now as well.
Yeah, right.
It's having access to that
The
medication.
scary part of it is I've talked to a bunch of first responders, and they bring somebody back, and next thing you know is, oh, you ruined my high. I got to go off and get another one.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it gets scary that people just...
But I would imagine that in that scenario, that the first responder would have to take them somewhere, right, to a hospital to
Well,
kind of...
that's one of the things that's happened since we've been doing this show.
Right.
We had a show with the chief of police in Beverly, and he was saying that you give somebody a Narcan shot,
Mm-hmm.
they come out of it, and you can't do anything with them. And funny thing, when they passed the last budget,
Yeah.
they wrote into the budget, oh yeah, you can put them into protective custody.
Okay.
So now they can scoop them up, take them off to the hospital and say, hey, look at this character.
Right.
And take care of him so he doesn't go in, she or it don't go into some other location and back to the needle.
Right. And so, I'll say these are people, right? I mean, there are friends, colleagues, husbands, wives, daughters, sons, whoever they are, and they're going to need help.
Yeah.
So I think the systems in place are progressing towards a better solution.
I think this particular additions to the budget was a good one in that people in this condition don't necessarily know what's best for them.
That is true.
And they have to be treated as, okay, you're in serious trouble and you need to be dried out, or whatever the fancy term for it is,
Right.
and at least give them a head start to get out of it without going right back in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Now, let's assume for a minute that somebody is dependent. And, you know, you got, say, a husband or wife and kids and stuff, and it can be pretty devastating to have somebody like that. What can the family do to, number one, help the person, but learn to cope themselves?
Right. So, you know, there's some good organizations out there. One of the ones that somebody that I know has used is learntocope.org, I believe. You know, they have really good website, you know, chat rooms where, you know, in the comfort of your own home, you can talk to somebody. You know, they have local meeting groups. You know, and so I think there's resources out there to communicate with others that are going through the same experience or have gone through the same experience and can now provide insight moving back. So I think one of the key things, Elliot, is for that person to recognize, hey, does my significant other or does this person have a problem, right? How do you recognize that?
That's a key question. How do you recognize when somebody has a problem?
Yeah. Can you recognize it quick enough before they get totally hooked?
Right.
And
So
they're amicable to some sort of adjustment?
right. So I can tell you based on what the person that I know, you know, that's gone through in their family, one of the first things that you see is things going missing, right? Whether it be something that can be pawned off, or money, or gift cards, or something that can be
Converted to cash.
cash, which can then be used to buy things, right? I think that one of the other things, you know, I think if you notice something odd about the behavior, right? Glassy eyes, I think it's been mentioned quite a bit. Just look into it a little further, right? You know, you can maybe write that off as saying, hey, you know, he's working too hard, or you know, something, you're not getting enough sleep or something. But if you look at that along with other things, you know, things going missing, maybe some personal hygiene things, right? You know, just, you know, if someone's wearing a three-piece suit every single day to work, right, and now all of a sudden they're you know, not shaved for like several days, you know, there's a change there, right? You know, you may need to take a look a little bit further.
I know somebody who I noticed that the eyes were glassy.
Right.
I didn't think much of it. He's got 3 young kids. You know,
Yeah.
I had 3 young kids at one time.
Right.
I understand the glassy eyes.
Yeah.
But he was also not as talkative as usual.
Yeah.
He sort of sat there kind of quietly. Again, you're tired, your eyes are glassy, you don't think twice about it.
Right.
A few days later, he was in a car accident and they found heroin in his car. Okay? So I guess if I had recognized the problem,
Yeah.
maybe I would have said something to somebody and hopefully got the person at the treatment before he hurt somebody else. The good news was he didn't hurt anybody else.
Right.
But that being said, if I could have prevented it, that would have been really nice.
Yeah.
So we want to recognize if you think there's a problem,
Right.
if you think there's something different, say something to somebody.
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the other things, Elliot, is, you know, if you're in a friend circle, right, and all of a sudden that person's really not part of the friend circle, right? And you know, and you've reached out to your friends and, hey, have you heard from so and so? Not really. You know, you kind of, if you put all the pieces together, you know, they'll drop out of that friend circle and focus only on those that, you know, where they're getting, or you know, that other set of friend circle, right?
Yeah, it's a problem that you all of a sudden, as you become more and more addicted, there's a demand for more and more stuff,
Right.
whatever it is, and there's a demand to escalate it to something stronger until you get to the point where they're out cold someplace, and then hopefully somebody comes by with a Narcan shot that brings them back.
Right.
But, you know, it happened to a kid across the street from me. It's all over the place. And this is the scary part, that you can read the obituaries and you see the code words, died suddenly at home. Right. And you start to wonder, geez, could somebody have picked up something, some clue as to what they were getting into? And a lot of it, from what I read, is really legitimate uses of painkillers that, well, we take them a little longer. We have a couple more. Well, I don't feel quite too good today. Instead of taking one, I'll take two. And basically, I think what it comes down to, from my perspective, is that if somebody's on painkillers, you've really got to watch what they're doing and not depend on them to follow the little instructions on the bottle.
Right.
And it just ruins your basic understanding of what's happening in your world.
Yeah.
And your judgment just goes to the proverbial hot spot. And so it's just like you say, you got to keep watching them and you got to do something about it,
Yeah.
because it can become too late, too quick.
It's very scary because the person that I know has a great family,
Right.
and pressures at work is what did it to him.
Yeah.
So there was it wasn't pain management in any case with him. It was pressures at work. So
Right.
I guess communication would be the key. You know, like you need to talk to your friends, talk to your spouse. If you're having a problem, say something. It can be fixed.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think communication is definitely a key here. You know, and even if it's not with your spouse or whatever, you know, there are organizations out there where you can talk to somebody,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's in a private chat room, whether it's in person, whether it's in a meeting, whatever it is. But resources are out there.
What I think a lot of people don't recognize is there is a very big business in dealing in illicit drugs. And we had a case that showed up in the Salem paper 2 months ago. Cops are doing a usual thing. They looked at somebody suspicious, went over and checked him out. The guy is swallowing balloons with a jug of water.
Holy smokes.
He's a dealer.
Wow.
And it's happening here. That's the Mexican black tar heroin that comes off the West Coast. So it's not something that's over there someplace, or it's in the low rent district or something. It's all over the
No,
place.
it's all over the place. I've been in, you know, pharmacy association meetings, and I've talked to, you know, the DAs, and you know, it's across all socioeconomic.
Yeah,
strategies.
It can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, if it happened to the person that I knew, trust me, it could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I think we've had a half an hour of fun, and it's going to end here, right here.
Yeah.
But I think the message you keep bringing to us is very important, that you got to recognize it and do something about it. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for watching this evening. Hope you join us on another show. We intend to do more shows about this problem until it goes away, and hopefully we can help somebody not become one of the statistics.